Five, four, three, two, one. Hey, gang, and welcome back to Alien Protocols, the Advanced Protocols Data Project. We've got a really cool special guest. This gentleman is a chemist. He's got a master's in chemistry, and he's a philosopher, and he's a UFO buff. He's got many different really cool occupations in the past, and I've known him from basically in different UFO forums having the most detailed and the most insightful kind of comments. And he's really respected by other UFO channels as someone who really has really deep insights. And so it's really a pleasure to introduce Ken Behrens. Ken, thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. Like I said, I enjoy your channel. I recommend it to everybody. I found out about it from another fellow YouTube channel owner, Mauricio Ruiz, the famous guy who photographed the Alvin, Texas 2008 UFO, which if you haven't seen, you should look at immediately and read my comment below about it.
Yeah, he's really an amazing guy and has really been a champion in the UFO community for UFO research and experiencers. And, you know, that is a hugely famous case. I remember when it first came out, how big of a case that was and how it was like this incredible close footage. And if you're as a viewer not familiar with that case, you have to check it out. And you also have to check out Mauricio's channel. He's got great material and great insights. And you'll see Ken's comments down there as the most incisive comments. He's really, really insightful, especially about technology and science. And that's the kind of thoughts that we need more of in this community, this real practical, rational sensibilities that you bring to a table, Ken. How did you get into UFOs?
Well, you know, as a teenager, I was, you know, I began, you know, early on, I was watching sci-fi movies on TV and in the theaters, you know, when Forbidden Planet came out, it was 1956. I was 5 years old. My mother took me to see that picture. And I remember sitting there and I'm watching the flying saucers and the robot and the whole thing. And I was just like hypnotized by the whole thing, you know. So I read a lot of sci-fi, but, you know, as I became, you know, got into my teenage years, I started realizing I wasn't really learning anything from sci-fi. You know, I wasn't learning science, you know. So I started focusing on science, and by chance, you know, I was rummaging through our public library, and I found this UFO book. I think it was the one by Donald Kehoe, that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I read through that, and I said, "Whoa, holy mo! If any of this is true, it's incredible. You know, that beings from other star systems are visiting us, and what are we doing? I think maybe we'll get to the moon by the end of this decade. You know, that was our big thing, right? I said, to the moon." They get into other star systems, right? I started studying the phenomena, and I said, you know, you read enough books on the subject, you realize that there's plenty of information on cases. You know, I mean, I was to the point where I could tell the difference between what was a genuine UFO and what wasn't. Okay, but I still had no idea how the UFOs worked. You know. And occasionally you'd see an author that would start talking about magnetic fields or something. It was a little very pseudo-scientific generalities. It wasn't really resolving the issue. And I decided that, no, I'm going to find out how these things, I want to know exactly how a UFO works, right? That took me about 20 years, you know. In 1985, I started publishing a little magazine. The article. I wrote little articles. I've been writing articles for other journals. This is before the internet. This is when we were, you know, everybody had they had what were called zines. Okay, you'd self-publish this little thing and you'd send it out to your mailing list and stuff. I started writing stuff for a group. It was called the SBI, the Scientific Bureau of Investigation. Nobody's ever even knows who they are nowadays, but they were kind of like, you know, after APRO disappeared and NICAP had disappeared, the only survivor was MUFON. So they kind of wanted to become like a competitor of MUFON, right? And I became their like #1 contributor, you know. Like a lot of the comments you see now, they were articles in that little
Before.
that little feed, right? And then eventually they folded, or you know, I started realizing that I had more to say than I could just put on in one issue of a zine, right? So I started saying, you know, why don't I publish my own journal, right? And I proceeded to do that. It was called Annals of Ufological Research Advances, or AURA for short.
Nice.
And I had my mailing list. I made it was only like 100 copies an issue. You know, I came up with, it was like a quarterly thing. And I had people at MUFON that were my fans. For example, the Jim McCampbell was their former research director. He was one of my biggest fans. You know, and he said something like, you know, MUFON should have had this a decade ago, right? They found out about me over at QFOS. That was the that was founded by Hynek, right? Hynek, in '85, he died in '85. My first issue came out in January, and he read that first issue.
Wow.
And he said, "This is very interesting material. I want something like this for us." Okay. And then 3 months later, he died of brain cancer. Okay.
That's amazing. You've had relations all the way back to Hynek. That is amazing.
Oh, yeah. So the you know, QFOS eventually published their own journal, the Journal of UFO Studies or something. I believe that my journal actually triggered them because of Hynek's approval of it. So I have roots to go back very far into this subject.
Well, it makes sense now why your comments are so insightful. You've written them before. You're just taken from past journal work.
Well, yeah, I eventually, you know, the journal ran for about 10 years. Then in 1995, I woke up one day and I said, you know, I can't add any more information to this because I don't have any. I've gone as far as I can with the data I have that's publicly available. Okay. And in my last issue, I said, well, this is basically it. I've gone as far as I can, and I believe that this can lay the foundation for future research. Okay. I eventually, after that, I published 3 books on the subject of UFOs. The first one is called Secrets of UFO Technology. It's like an introductory book. I highly recommend it to anybody that wants to get into scientific ufology, you know, where you're starting to talk about, you know, things like physics and how to neutralize the effects of gravity and inertia, how a craft could do it, this kind of stuff. Trying to get away from pseudoscience, trying to get into physics, and realizing that, you know, since our physics is incomplete, because obviously we're not visiting them, okay, you know, I have to do a small amount of speculation.
Sure.
You know, under control, right? The second book is basically, you know, after I'd done the first one, I had a lot of material left over that I hadn't used, okay? And I said, you know, I think a lot of people would be interested in this other material. So I figured, I want to do a book on that, right? So I did do the book on, this is what I had discarded from the first book, right? The result was the largest single volume ever done on the subject of UFOs. Okay, it's over 700 pages, right?
Wow.
So that's out. And
where can people get copies of those?
They're all on Amazon.
That's great.
You get them all on Amazon. Just, you know, books by Ken Behrens, just, you know, put it in their search engine, it'll pop out. They're available as ebooks. They're available. Some of them are hardcover and soft cover. Some are just soft cover. The third book was titled The New Science of the UFO.
Wow.
A whole bunch of never before seen articles. And I put the entire collection of Aura magazine into it. 10 years of the journal are all in that one book. So if you weren't the part of the 100, you know, and those 100 were tended to be all top people in the field at the time. If you weren't one of them and didn't get your copy, right, and most of them never paid for it, it was gratis, right? Here's your chance to catch up on all this stuff.
To get all of them. Now, have you ever personally had a sighting?
Oh yeah, I've had several sightings. Yeah.
Did you have any amazing sightings? And you feel comfortable describing it?
Amazing sighting. I had a sighting when I was a kid. I was about 8 or 9 years old. Okay? And it was the summertime. It was night. It was about maybe 9 o'clock at night. And it was during the month of July. We were on summer vacation. And I remember in those days, we didn't have air conditioners. You know, when it got hot out, you sat outside your house until it got cool enough to go in and sleep, you know, which is like maybe 10 o'clock at night, or I think. So we're all sitting on this front, you know, it was like it was a property that had a house in the front and a house in the back. And I lived in the house in the back, right? The landlord and his family lived in the house in the front. And he had a big porch. So we were all sitting on this porch, right? There must have been about maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 people, all adults except for me. I'm sitting in the corner of this porch, and they were all kind of at the other end of the porch. All of a sudden, I see a flash of light come down out of the sky, underneath the roof of this porch, comes right toward my face, okay?
Wow.
Does a sudden climb and disappears. And it was bright. It lit up the whole porch, right? And for about a minute after this flash happened, everybody said, there was no one said anything. And then all of a sudden someone said, "What the hell was that?" Right? Now I happened to be looking at this thing at the exact moment that it was lined up with my face. And I don't think it was more than 2 or 3 feet away from me. Okay.
Wow.
And what I remember, it was glowing a kind of a bright bluish white, greenish white color. It was, I don't remember the color exact, but I remember the shape. It had like an egg-shaped central body.
Wow.
It had like two wings extending out on each side that had like ridges on them. Okay. And the only reason I saw it was because, you know, hang on, I got a phone call coming through here.
Please, no problem.
It's probably a telemarketer I gotta get rid of. Okay.
Nothing worse than a telemarketer, right?
Yeah, that was a pharmacist calling in for one of my associates here. Anyway, I looked at, and it was about maybe, I'd say about, I don't know, 10 inches. The wingspan was 10 inches, right?
Wow, tiny little wings.
Yeah, and I don't think any of the adults saw this because they were kind of like stunned. They only saw it as a flash, right? But I saw this thing line up with my face just before it took off. So for a moment, it was like, you know, I was looking at it head on, so it didn't, the motion was frozen, right? And then it took off again, right? So over the years, I discussed this with people, and I remember discussing it with a teacher in high school, and a biology teacher, and said, "Oh, it was probably a bat with the luminescent fungi on it or something." You know, I said, "Wait a minute, you tell me a bat came flying down that was glowing from fungi on it?" He says, "Yeah, well, you know, we have bats in New Jersey, right? Yeah, I've lived in New Jersey all my life. Okay, I have never seen a bat in my entire life. Okay."
But you have to give them extra credit for the luminescent fungi. That's pretty awesome. That's better than swamp gas.
You know, there are glowing bats flying around the Jersey guy, right? Then I remember I remember discussing it with someone else. I said, "What was July? Maybe it was some kid was playing with, you know, a skyrocket or something, and it fell over and shot toward you." I said, "No, this wasn't a skyrocket." So I thought about this. I said, you know, as I started learning more about UFOs, I said, this must have been some sort of an ET probe, you know? Maybe it was flying along, it saw the group of people on the porch, and whoever was operating it decided to fly down and get a close-up picture of me, right? So if that picture's out there somewhere, I'd like to see the expression on my face.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, we have this whole belief, I have this whole belief, and our group does as well too, and it makes simple, you know, logic that, you know, the craft start off, you know, larger as mother ships, and then they have smaller ships within that go out to do obvious missions, smaller probe ships, and they can have smaller probe ships, and they can have smaller probe ships. And you wonder, you know, as it gets closer to the surface of the Earth, they would theoretically get smaller and smaller and more numerous.
So
And
you're saying you can have probes that release probes.
Absolutely. And you would think that would be logical. We have ships that release smaller ships. You know, we have boats that release, you know, submarines that have smaller submarines underneath that they control. And because it's,
I guess you could have something like a master probe that would have little slave probes that it can release.
yeah, and there's a lot of UFO cases that have, there's a famous one in Mexico shot from 2 different angles of a UFO kind of spinning like this and then shooting out a whole bunch, both sides. And it was corroborated by another totally separate person videotaping it, actually from the other side of it, completely from another town or 2 away. And it's a very famous case, but there's a lot of cases of UFOs, of the famous Belgium case with the triangle releasing a red one. And so it's interesting. And if you look at the government's recent list of the studies that Hal Puthoff mentioned at the recent URBA conference, one of them is, and I've got to get the exact phraseology of this because this is amazing. They've got several of these programs designed to test the limits of the human ability to control multiple craft. And this contract, this is beautiful. Here we go. It's called, here we go. Okay. Cognitive limits on simultaneous control of multiple unmanned spacecraft. And that was done by Richard Gennick at Wayne State University. He was the one in charge with that research study for Hal Puthoff and ATIP. There's a lot of really interesting studies here that deal with that mind-machine interface. So very fascinating.
If you have enough computers and you have high-speed connections, you can do some really amazing things. You know, as far as the size goes, a lot of people think, well, a probe could be maybe a foot. You know, it can't get smaller than that, right? Well, I had a friend.
Sure. Are you sure they can't get smaller than a foot?
Yeah. Well, this friend of mine was driving down I think it was the New Jersey Turnpike at the time, right? And he claims he saw this small red object up ahead of him. And he started to close on it, getting closer and closer to it. And it turned out to be a small glowing red disc. And as he got closer to it, it eventually went up and over the back of his car.
Wow.
And actually, it actually just raised up so he could go under it, right?
Wow.
He kept going, right? I says, you know, well, how small was this disc? He says, I don't think it was more than 4 inches across. So can you imagine making a probe only 4 inches in diameter that has a complete propulsion system in it?
You can, you know, we're working at, and DARPA has little tiny probes this big, and I would think that they could have, and now you have to also keep in mind the metamaterial of this stuff, and from the military cases, these craft can turn on and off their visibility at their will, basically. So imagine a metamaterial craft, really small, flying around, you know, neutralizing gravity in a small area that we just can't detect, just outside of our perception.
This is all theoretically possible.
There's a great couple cases from MUFON recently that show probe-like craft, and I did a video on it. Here's one of them here. There's another one of them. Oh, excuse me. And these were seen. One of them was a video taken at a beach, and this type thing flies super fast between 2 people that are in the water. So it's a distance away. It's like 75 feet away, but it flies between 2 people. So you can tell it's where it is. And there's some comparisons of them. And oh, here's the video of it right there. Flying. See how low it is?
Wow.
And it flew between these people super fast. They couldn't even notice it with their regular eye because it was just moving so quick. And sightings like that make me wonder, you know, what's around us. If they're more numerous as they get lower, these probes, what the heck's around us? I want some infrared goggles.
Well, you know, if they travel fast enough, you're not going to be able to detect them on radar or, you know, a FLIR camera or visually. Um, you know, it's obvious. They come here and they want to check out surface life, and they want to do it without being detected as little as possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they probably send down probes and they fly around. They video everything, and they try to, you know, they want to. They don't want to see us reacting to them. They want to see us acting naturally, which means
Yes.
we're not aware of them. So
Yes.
that means high speed. It means invisibility. Um, and yeah, and
What if they made a miscalculation and at hypersonic speed, you know, accidentally hit somebody? Of course, they're not
well,
going to do that. Their
yeah. Well,
computational
this is
speed is
it.
probably
If
too
the
high.
craft is massless, it's not going to do you any injury.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you might feel a sudden, you know, that, you know, if it's using plasma dynamic propulsion, there will be a buildup of air pressure behind it, but it'll be so, you might just feel like someone gave you a slight push. You wouldn't be aware that you were hit by something that was going, you know, 10,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. But, you know, on one hand, I say, well, it's kind of benign. They want to learn about humans. You know, we'd probably be doing the same thing if we went out to a planet. We saw, you know, be doing the same thing a couple of centuries from now. So, but it's just the idea that they're kind of doing it covertly, you know. But then again, you say, well, yeah, but then they can't say we're doing it because that would interfere with the observation. It's
Sure.
like one of these, you know, it's like a college psychology experiment where they tell the person they want to do, they're testing for A, but in reality they're testing for B, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of something like that. It's like, it kind of creeps me out a little, but on the other hand, I can understand it, you know?
It creeps me out big time, you know, and it makes me think of this thing going on now with Dr. Thomas Campbell, who I'm sure you're familiar with, the physicist who got, I think, over $250,000 to test whether this universe is a simulation. And it made
Oh,
me think, if we test, if just the fact that we're testing to see that we're in a simulation, does that just test in and of itself mean that we're maybe near the end of the simulation? And even worse, what if we test and find out we are living in a simulation? Would that precipitate the end of the simulation because it's no longer unbiased? So
I know it's some super higher being will say, oh, they figured it out, shut the program off.
so Dr. Thomas Campbell could be essentially killing the universe, destroying the universe. If he discovers we're a simulation, they might shut it off.
Yeah,
But
this is,
maybe,
sounds like the plot of those Matrix movies, you know.
right?
I don't know. I think I'd like to think we're in a real universe, and UFOs are nuts and bolts, and they're as real as automobiles, airplanes, and boats, you know. And
I think they are. Where do you think they're from? Who are they? Where are they from? Are they
yeah,
us from the future?
it's like that. There was a statistic that Stanton Friedman gave out. He said within 55 light years of Earth or our solar system, you've got 1,000 stars. And of those 1,000 stars, between about 50 and 60 are almost identical to our sun. So you would expect them to have solar systems similar to, you know, ours, and at least one terrestrial planet similar to Earth, and, you know, with life on it. They said that there was some researcher. He went through all the UFO literature. And he made a list up of all the different aliens, the occupants that have been spotted near UFOs, and he came out to between 50 and 60 of them.
Hmm.
So he said, you know, those 50 and 60 different beings you're seeing are probably coming from these 50 or 60 nearby terrestrial Earth-like planets, right? So that's probably the bulk of who's visiting us. And of course, you're going to get beings from beyond that, you know. They may be here for, you know, maybe the local ones are doing mining and stealing our resources, whatever. The ones that are coming from a more distant part of our galaxy, you know, they could be coming from, say, star systems that are dying out. You know, their suns are dying out. They're overpopulated. They're looking for new worlds to colonize. So they come flying past our solar system and say, oh, there's an Earth-like planet, you know, or whatever their planet is, their planet-like planet, right? And they come over here and they fly around. And they're looking for a planet that's habitable for them, that doesn't have any dominant intelligent humanoid species on it, right? Well, as soon as they fly down, they start seeing buildings and cars and people at beaches and whatever. They say, oh, no good, it's occupied. And they just get back in and they keep going, right?
Hmm.
And then very rarely you might have something where you have someone from other galaxy coming, okay? This is one of the fascinating things I found from my research into this UFO propulsion. The amount of energy it takes to fly between star systems within a galaxy is about the same as the amount of energy you have to expend to fly between galaxies.
Wow.
It sounds incredible, right? It turns out that the reason for that, even though the distances involved between galaxies are like 1 million times more than between star systems within a galaxy, it turns out that the density of the gases in intergalactic space are about 1/1,000,000th of what they are inside a galaxy. So the amount of energy you need to overcome the resistance of those gases, right, is about the same. So it's actually as easy to travel, say, between two star systems in a galaxy as it is to be between two neighboring galaxies. So some of our visitors may be from other galaxies. And I tend to think that, if you're going on an intergalactic trip, you're going to want to have a really big, I mean, you're going a long way. You want to feel secure. And to me, secure means a really humongous mothership. That's like when you hear this, oh, it was 10 miles across type of thing. That's probably intergalactic. If you got something that's a couple thousand feet, that's probably inside our galaxy.
Do you think it's more likely that the creatures would send themselves on such a dangerous mission, or would they send avatars that they could see and live and experience through?
Yeah, that's theoretically possible, but there's a kind of ego thing involved. Landing a robot on Mars is not that as prestigious as actually landing a human on Mars. Right?
Sure. Like real hunting versus, computer game hunting.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, there's a difference, right? They could make a completely remotely controlled, in real time remotely controlled, using this, what they call
Entanglement?
Yeah, quantum entanglement type technology. But I don't think they do that. I think they actually get in their craft, they live in there, and they come here. And they want to actually be able to find a planet they can land and walk around on, all right?
What do you think about the possibility of us in the future going back in time to somehow increase our technological rate or something?
Yeah, that's very, very, if you believe in Einstein's relativity, backwards time travel is impossible. There are no conditions that under which would allow it. But you'll get all kinds of speculation. Hey, we can go back in time using a negative mass neutrinos or something. I mean, it's all speculation.
Tachyons.
Yeah, it's all. There's some super technological way it could be done, and what. But this is often brought up in science fiction movies. Say you go back in time, and you make some change because of your presence there, that results in you not being born, or the people who built your spaceship or time machine not being born, right? What happens to you?
Well, it intrinsically, you can never go to that time because it's not going to be the same time you're looking for because you are there. It's now a new time. So, if you believe in many worlds, you just split off another, many worlds universe. I'm not a subscriber to many worlds, but the whole fact that we indisputably can see these craft on this military sensors and equipment, it indicates that there's this whole new Copernican revolution that we haven't quite approached yet in terms of science. There's a huge, massive, groundbreaking paradigm that's about to be shattered. We used to, in the Galileo Copernicus times, thought we were the center, the earth was the center of the universe. And then, it was great religious struggle for a long period of time. Now human beings think that not our planet, but we are the center of the universe. And that's going to be shattered, and all of our physics are going to be shattered. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I agree 100%. There is going to be a big paradigm shift. I compare it to like the first time someone made an electromagnetic field. I believe it was Orsted. I can't remember the scientist's name. Might have been Orsted. He was giving a science a demonstration to his students, and he was trying to prove to them that there was no connection between electric and magnetic fields, right? He had a compass, and he had a piece of wire, and he was sending electricity through the wire, and the compass wasn't really moving that much. And then for some reason he says, well, let's try it. He wrapped the wire, and in those days the wire, they didn't have plastic insulated wire. They had wire wrapped with thread or something, right? He took the wire, he wrapped it around like a wooden piece of wood, made a coil, and he says, this should finally prove to you students how there's absolutely no connection whatsoever between electric fields and magnetic. And he connected it to the battery, and the compass started spinning like crazy. It actually invented the first electric motor, right?
Wow.
And you know, from there, people saw, wait a minute, you can make a magnetic field with electricity? That was unheard of, right? And before you know it, we have, like, you know, generators, we have motors, right? And they help transform the whole world, right?
Big time.
Yeah. So I look at it kind of like what we're kind of like at that stage now, where, you know, we have electric fields and we have magnetic fields. We're on the verge of being able to create gravity fields using electricity or electric and magnetic fields. So we'll actually be able to artificially create a gravity field. In other words, you'll have a device. When it's energized, its mass and weight will increase artificially, right? Once you can do that, the next step you say is, you know, I wonder if I can do the reverse of that. Can I artificially reduce the mass and weight of an object? And there's actually a very simple way that that can be done, okay? That's why I came up with this name for my device. I call it the anti-mass field generator. A lot of people are confused by it. They think it has something to do with antimatter. It has nothing to do with antimatter.
Mass.
Anti-mass means that when this device is activated, there's a region around it where all the objects in that region suddenly start losing their mass and their weight and their inertia. And if you take that device and you put it inside a hull that's airtight, okay, and you activate it, the device plus the hull plus whoever's inside there will begin losing mass and weight and inertia. And, you know, if they're on the surface of the Earth, they'll become buoyant, they'll rise. Okay, you've got your first UFO. Okay, if you can add some method to provide propulsive forces. You know,
it's essentially gravity nullification. You're nullifying the effects of a giant mass like the Earth next to us, so you're literally in a bubble of protected space.
Gravitational interaction requires the interaction of two gravity fields, one from the Earth and one from an object, like a craft. All you're doing with this method is you're neutralizing the gravity field put out by the object. It doesn't affect the Earth's gravity field, just the object. When that happens, that object is no longer affected. It no longer interacts with the Earth's gravity field because it has no gravity field of its own to interact with the Earth's gravity field. So that's basically what they're doing, okay? And we're on the verge of being able to do that now. I'm pretty sure that the physicists working for the government, this secret group, you know, this deep state, ultra elite group, I call them the cosmic Watergate criminal conspirators, but it's a very small group. They're not accountable to anybody.
Yeah. They're in private companies, so they could be avoided, you know, by the Information Act.
I don't even know if they're in private companies. They could all be in some giant underground government facility somewhere where these guys are in there. They're the ones that get the best data, the best photos, the best film, the best video. Any records recovered goes right to them for, you know, reverse engineering.
We know a few of those locations. Yeah.
They're into all this. Okay. They've got the bodies of the crew, right? They're somewhere in cold storage, but they're not really interested in them so much. They're really interested in how does this craft work? How do they gravitate the craft? And their primary goal is maybe to use it for weapons development.
Of course.
They're not interested in helping NASA land a man on Mars in an hour.
No,
Okay.
you can look at this list of all those research studies that Hal Puthoff did, and you can tell that they're not going to be building the coolest amusement park ride imaginable. They're going to be building probably the last generation of weapons that human beings will face, invisible to radar and eyesight, gravity nullifying, hypersonic, weapons.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. We're going to have to go in just a second here, but I just love this conversation because we just got to the meat. I mean, immediately to the meat and potatoes of a whole bunch of issues. And just like online, your cerebral alacrity is really, really fun and really insightful and keen. And I would love to have more interviews with you if you were amenable to such a thing, Ken.
When you're ready, I'm ready. Whatever you want to, whatever you want to chat about, I'm willing to do it. My goal is to, try to raise people's awareness of the reality. I call it the ET UFO reality, and help them steer away from the ET UFO mythology, which I'm convinced that this elite group, the Cosmic Watergate criminal conspirators, they use another group I call the UFO silencers, and their goal is to promote the mythology. It wastes people's time and energy chasing nonsense, and not going after the reality of the subject, which these Cosmic Watergate criminal conspirators, they consider themselves the guardians of that reality.
You are so insightful. Everything you just said, I've encountered. Whenever I try and find truth, there's a group of these people. I speak about them in past videos that everyone knows about. Dr. Greer was just talking about, this group of people and their anti-gravity thing. And he was talking about Joe Firmage and the CIA that works with them, which is Ron Pandolfi, and this guy who claims to be the Messiah, which is Dan Smith. And there's all these rumors and people involved with this stuff, and they're doing exactly what you say, obfuscating and damaging. And thank God for people educating rationally like you.
Yeah, I mean, you can waste your whole life chasing nonsense, and at the end of the line, you will know nothing more than when you started. I want to see this. I want to see this technology developed for use by humans. Okay, I want to see. The Cosmic Watergate guys, they couldn't care less. Like I said, they couldn't care less about NASA getting a man on Mars in an hour. And they could care even less about the average person having, say, their own kind of flying car. Remember Back to the Future, the flying car?
Of course,
that was the most popular of the three movies because of the flying car, right? Everybody would love to have a flying car, right? And this technology makes it feasible. I mean, you might not be able to go out into space, but you could, say, travel around the Earth and reach any place on the Earth in a matter of minutes, because you'd be able to travel at tens of thousands of miles an hour, and to do it in complete safety and comfort, right?
You'd never lift a heavy object again. You'd never have to. There'd be something to lift it for you.
No, and it has other ramifications. The technology can be used for energy generation, pollutionless energy generation. That's a big thing we have now with this climate change we're combating. There could be medical aspects to it. I just see it as a big potential boost. Right now on this planet, there's about 1 billion people that are living in squalor. They're living in this one notch. They're either in a garbage dump or one notch above a garbage dump. I mean, they're little kids and stuff, right?
And it's going to get worse in the future.
Oh, sure. Maybe we could get them maybe we could get them a decent standard of living. I mean,
absolutely. This technology could really help. You're right.
I read this figure that 1/4 of the people that die every day, and there are tens of thousands of people that die every day all around the world, right? 1/4 of them die because of an infectious disease that could be completely cured for less than $1 worth of antibiotics.
Oh, it's so heartless. We in society we just think about our own little world and our Facebook page and our Twitter account. Ken, it's sobering, but also so kind of refreshing to hear you talk. Where can people get your books and contact you if they wanted to? Amazon, correct?
I've written 5 books. They're all on Amazon. My first book, by the way, was on paranormal phenomena.
Wow.
A lot of people think I'm just into UFOs. I'm a big student of the paranormal. I think it's another area of science that has been virtually completely neglected. It's only gotten a fraction of the attention it deserves. We have to encourage people who have any kind of ability that they can do on a repeatable basis, reliably. We got to get them into laboratories where they can be studied. See, so this is Mr.
Some, I'm sure those people, hypothetically, if they existed, probably don't want to be a laboratory monkey.
I know it's unfortunate, but if you want to make progress, you know, you gotta. It's like you know, if someone's got a disease, they got to give a blood sample so we can look at it under a microscope. I mean, you know, you got to have people that'll step forward and say, yes, I can do this weird thing. What is it? Okay, and then do it. And
how does it work?
Yeah, make measurements.
You know what? That's going to be our next video, because that ties into all of this stuff and so many other things, the power of the subconscious. So I would love to dive into that next.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Ken, so much. I really appreciate your time. I mean, I know we could go on for 2 or 3 hours with this.
All day,
have
man.
a lot of fun. But we'll do it again really soon, and I'm sure the listeners are going to really enjoy this. Thanks a lot, Ken. Thank you so much.
Take care.